Hey, hello, I'm Kråkan, also known as Corvus Cornix. Welcome to Class Movie Rambles, where I talk about old movies that I found in my closet while cleaning. This week's movie is The Amazing Spider-Man, and it was made in 2012. It's about 2 hours and 60 minutes long, and the movie starts with a young kid playing hide and seek. You find out that it's Peter Parker, the man who will later become Spider-Man. And there has been a break-in at his parents' house, and Peter finds out that his parents is doing some really weird stuff. And I think in the comic books, his parents were spies or something, so it makes a whole lot of sense. But if you don't know the Spider Universe, this doesn't make sense at all. So the parents drive him to his grandparents' house, Aunt May and Uncle Ben, and that's the place where he stays. And his parents kind of disappear in some mysterious circumstances, and he gets to stay there. So cut to current day, and he is being at school, and he is like this nerdy kid, and he gets beat up by a jockey called Flash. And but the fighting stops, and he gets to go home. And apparently the grandparents' house has a flooded basement, so he goes down to help Uncle Ben to fix the flood and the leak, and he finds his old dad's briefcase, which he takes up to his room later, and he investigates and checks out, and he finds a photo of a man which later turns out to be Dr. Connors, and it's one of the acquaintance of his father, and that's at least what Uncle Ben tells him. And Peter Parker goes out on Bing to search for who Dr. Connors is. And I don't know about you, but I don't know anyone that uses Bing to search. Not anyone. But anyway, it's kind of a funny, weird thing, reference, whatever. And he searched for Dr. Connors, and he finds out that he's a or a doctor at this place called Oscorp. And he goes to Oscorp, and he steals a name tag and goes along a tour, and he meets up with Dr. Connors, and he talks to him. He says something smart, rather. And then he leaves the group, and he goes into a chamber which has a lot of spiders in it. And of course, one of the spiders actually bites him, and he goes home, and he falls asleep on a subway train, because this spider was a special kind of spider which was irradiated or something. And there's this homeless guy that messes with him, and he wakes up and he realizes that he has all these weird abilities now. So he's super strong, super fast, and he can hear things. And he doesn't really know what to do with his power, so he beats up the guys. Excuse me. And then he gets off the train and goes home, and he talks to Aunt May and Uncle Ben, and he goes up to his room. For some reason, he's super hungry, so he takes a lot of food, and he goes up to his room, and he just eats and sleeps. And then in the morning, he has trouble controlling his new powers. He just rips up the handles of the doors and whatnot, and it's kind of a funny scene. He has to realize how much pressure he has to apply to the toothpaste tube, and I thought that was funny. So yeah, and then he goes on to Bing and search even more about what happens to those who get bitten by spiders and whatnot. And he later goes to Dr. Connors' house and confronts him, and he tells Dr. Connors basically that he and his dad used to be colleagues, and he's let in. And from this point out, after school, Peter goes to Dr. Connors' lab to study. They kind of talk and stuff. So one of the reasons that Connor is helping Peter out is because Peter has a formula that was made by his dad called the Decaying Formula. And it becomes important later in the movie because it's part of the missing equation to Connor's dilemma. He is subject to save his boss, Norman Osborn, from dying somehow, and also it's a little bit of a self-game because Dr. Connors has lost one of his arms and he wants to regrow it at any cost. But anyway, meanwhile, back at school, Flash is being a total a-hole again, and Peter steps up to him because he's made fun of a girl making an art project. And he humiliates Flash basically and destroys a basketball hoop in the process, and he gets taken to the principal. And later Peter talks to Uncle Ben, and Uncle Ben is kind of pissed at him because he had to leave a shift at the factory. So now Peter has to pick up Aunt May because he can't. He has to work a double shift. So later Peter goes to Dr. Connor's office with the Decaying Formula, and basically they do run tests on a simulating program, and the decaying algorithm actually works. And Peter forgets to pick up Aunt May, of course. And then later, Dr. Connors injects one of the lab rats with the formula directly. And Peter goes home, and Ben argues with him about not picking up Aunt May. And Peter goes out, and Ben follows him out the streets. Peter goes out to buy milk or something, but there's a robber there, and there's this discussion between the shopkeeper and Peter, because Peter is missing 2 cents for his chocolate milk or whatever. And there's a guy that robs the place, and Peter doesn't give a damn because he didn't get his stuff, basically. So he's letting this robber go, and the shopkeeper kind of yells stop that robber, but Peter is not doing it. And Uncle Ben sees this, and he tries to stop the robber, and he basically gets shot, and he dies. So there's this sad kind of scene where he goes back to Aunt May, and she's obviously distraught about this, and Peter goes back to school, and there's this whole down kind of spiral thing. And around this time also, Connor's project hasn't shown results because they will not use the formula on humans yet, because it's an early testing phase. So he gets laid out from his project, and Connor's in a desperate situation. He injects himself with the formula, and he passes out. And Peter goes out with a date with a girl called Stacy, and she actually worked at Oscorp as the guide, one of the guides, and she's really smart. And it turns out that the police chief is actually her father, and there's this weird kind of discussion that they have because of Peter. I think Peter has already done and tried to kind of establish his power at this point. So he's been Spider-Man for a bit, and he's basically been trying to catch his father's or Uncle Ben's killers. So he has been out trying to stop criminals and find the right one. And in this process, he fell down like a wrestling ring, and he saw this mask on a poster, and he made his own suit. And this suit looks so high-tech and awesome, like rubber kind of high-tech material, and there's no way that he made that himself. There's no way he could have made it. And he also made these web shooters from some of the stuff that he find in Connor's labs. And then of course the dinner date doesn't go that well, and Dr. Connor wakes up in a sewer pipe, and he feels amazing, and he realized that he has an arm, right? And when the solution kind of leaves his body, he loses the arm, basically. So after dinner, Peter and Stacy goes out to the balcony to get some fresh air and leave that hence hateful discussion or whatever with the father. And Peter tells her that he is Spider-Man. And then cutting to Connors attacking the guy that got him fired in the first place on a bridge, and the guy's in a car. And Spider-Man goes there and he saves the guy, or more or less he fights Connors, I think. And then Connors pushed a car over the railing, and Spider-Man is forced to stop it with lifting the car and saving this kid, which is in the back seat. And he does that, of course. And his father, the kid's father, will become important later at the end of the movie. So even later, Peter goes to talk to Connors. Now he's in his normal human form, and he talks about what weakness reptilians have. And the Connors is kind of, his brain is kind of changed by the chemicals and the injections. And the reason, I forgot to tell, but the reason why Connors uses a lizard as a base is because lizard can grow back tails and missing limbs. So that's why he was experimenting on lizards. So that's why he turns into a lizard when he takes the injections. I probably should have said that before, but yeah. So Connor says lizards have no secrets, but they have no weaknesses. And then Connors leave, and Peter sees one of the lab rat that got injected in the beginning of the movie, and he's eating the other lab rat. So something is obviously messed up and wrong. And then later, Peter goes to the police chief to try to convince him that Connors is this big lizard thing. When he talks to him, he's like, no, that can't be true. That can't be true. That's really weird. And then, but he kind of sends out some cars and cops either way because Peter wouldn't lie about something like this anyway. So Peter watches some bad CGI lizards crawling down a drain, and he follows them. He puts on his suit and he puts up a lot of cameras. I don't know why the lizards, maybe just like a cozy place for lizards, I guess. I don't know. So he goes down there and he fights Connors in lizard form, and there's a bad fight, and Peter gets flashed out of the sewers, and Connors realizes that Peter is Spider-Man because stupid Peter has his cameras branded with his name. So now Connors knows exactly who he is. So Peter goes to Gwen to get healed up, and then they go for a web swing, and Connors debate with himself in his lair what to do. I think he's like has a split personality, maybe something to do with the serum, like the human component of his brain versus his like primitive brain, the lizard brain. I don't know. And then there's like this funny scene where Connors goes to Peter's school where he's there just to fight him head on because now he knows exactly who he is, and Peter puts on his suit and he fights Connors back, and there's a funny Stan Lee cameo where he's like a librarian punching books with like a stamp, and in the background there's like this big fight between Connors and Spider-Man. He doesn't realize. It's kind of this funny moment actually, yeah. So Peter discovers Connor's hidden lab in the sewers, and he finds out that he's gonna spread a virus and turn everyone into lizards. Yeah. So in order for him to do this, he needs to get up to the Oscorp tower, to the top of it, and use one of Peter's dad's inventions to spread it all out evenly in the atmosphere or whatever. So yeah. He puts on his Spider-Man suit and he goes there, and he gets shot down by some SWAT troopers because Spider-Man is not actually a good guy in the cops' kind of vision. He is more of a vigilante, and he fights the cops, and his father, or Gwen's father, Stacy's father, sees his face and he lets him go. But at this point, Spider-Man is injured. He got shot in the leg, or his leg. And he is having trouble to swing to the top of the Oscorp Tower. So the guy who saved the kid, the guy who got his kid saved in the car, he tells his buddies to direct the cranes to Oscorp Tower. So he just swings all the way over there and he confronts the lizard, Connors. And Gwen is there too for some reason. And there's a fight between Connor and Spider-Man, and the police chief helps out, but he gets injured critically, and Spider-Man just changed like the ammunition for the machine from the virus to something else, like a cure that he made. I don't know how, I forgot how he got it, but he got it. So, and then the whole tower starts to crumble because of the fight, and the thing that happens is that Connor's effects wears off, and he actually saves Peter from death, and he loses his arm in the process, and this like he turns to be like a little redeemed in the end. And then Peter goes to save the police chief, and he makes Peter promise that he will stay away from Gwen Stacy. I just realized that she's called Gwen Stacy. Why didn't I get whatever. So he made Peter like promise to stay away from my daughter, basically. And then Peter goes home to Aunt May after all this, and there's a funeral for Gwen's father, and of course Peter can't be there. And then later Gwen goes home to Peter and asks him why he wasn't at the funeral and why have you been avoiding me and everything, and he doesn't say anything. So she just figures out herself that your father made you promise, like, didn't he? And of course he did. And there's this kind of sad episode where he goes through his stuff and he listened to Ben's last audio recording of his speech that he sent to Peter's phone, I guess. So it's a really emotional, kind of nice speech. And then cutting to him at school, and he's arriving late because he has been doing Spider-Man stuff, and Gwen is there. And it ends on a little sweet note because he hints at that he can't promise he can't uphold his word in anything he tells the teacher this. So what do I think about The Amazing Spider-Man? I think it's too much. In two ways. The movie is too long, 2 hours and 60 minutes, and it drags a bit, and the CGI is really it's kind of like plasticky. But the other thing is that just as the Marvel movies or the hero movies of this genre, there was a lot of Spider-Man movies at the same time, and they tried to reboot the franchise like once and then again. So I'm not sure if this was the last reboot or it has to be like the middle part. So I was kind of fed up on Spider-Man. So I mean, I have hard to actually tell these different Spider-Mans apart. So I don't know. I don't think I can recommend this movie. Yeah, go see something else. Anyway, thanks for listening and or watching, and take care.